Right, in this video we're going to look at lab 3 from our 8246. So we start with calling up the lab 3 sheet, and as it says here we're going to look at using PHP first to explore PHP and what it can do, and then to use it to interact with an SQL database using forms, all of the things that we've learned about. It hints that there's some websites we can go to learn about HTML and PHP. Now it says we can use various tools to edit PHP, which is a text file like HTML. So it could be Notepad or Notepad++, and previously I'd used something like Notepad++ to edit. This time it suggests perhaps we could use Visual Studio. So let's go and get Visual Studio working. Here we are, we're launching Visual Studio. And then it says go to the File menu. So I'll shrink this down a bit. On the File menu we can open a website, and we can go into copy that, paste it here. And show the folder that we're going to develop the website in, and then we can add a new page. So right click on the website in the Solution Explorer, so we can right click here and add new item. So we choose an Add HTML page here, and for the file name we can give it a name, so it says test PHP or something. Okay. So there, as it says, it's added a bare bones file. It doesn't quite look like that one, but it's not dissimilar. And then it says to put some PHP in it. Here's some PHP, so we could copy that from the laboratory sheet and put it in the body place here. And we can tidy that up a bit. It's a bit untidy. save it. It's renamed it test it, so I didn't want to do that. I want to do save as test .php. I didn't want to test HTML, so I can remove that. Right, so I've got the file called test PHP. So then we can load this in the web browser. Changing this to my username. Here you can see it's printed the output. So that's just a simple word, but it's shown you can actually do arithmetic in PHP. So what we're going to do is we've got a more sophisticated example here, which perhaps I could add to the PHP code. And then I just need to reformat this code. Okay. Now I can save that. And we could execute this code. And you can see this code is an array of objects, 1, 2, 3, and it's indexed the array entry, so it's made these associative arrays. So the task is to modify this code to display the array of fruit in an HTML table. So I haven't done that, but I'll leave that as an exercise to you, which involves putting more HTML in there to make it a table. So the next piece of PHP here which we can add is now linking to the SQL. So I can paste this code now into here. We have to reformat it again. So So here we are, we've pasted that in, and it's fully formatted. So what we've done here is we've asked it to create a database, and I need to change that to my username, CFSBCT. So we're going to create a database in my username, and then create and execute an SQL query. And then close one. So we can try and save that file, and we can now try and execute it. We've got database successfully created. Did have to add the domain name for the database. Let's go back to the instructions. So it says it's also useful to fetch data from a database. So I can add some more code here to fetch data from the database, or insert values or get them out. So we could add that code as well. And we have to format it again. So there we've got it all laid out again, pasted from there, and I've changed the database username to the correct username. So we can save that, and we could go to the web form, refresh. We got an error that it can't create it because it was already there from the last time I ran it, and now it's added some information there, so we can carry on. So it says the first part of the code adds a couple of records, and then we've done a query to fetch them from the server. So now we've got some code in PHP which interacts with this database, which I can refresh it, and we can see we've got a table of cars. Now we've created our table of cars using the instructions here. We can see it's given us a task that we could write a web page to return the crime data for Devon, but we can move down and we can look at the next task, which is about making forms and getting post back. So we need, as it says, we need to put in a form in our HTML, and then we need some PHP that receives the result of that form. So let's go into editing our code, and we can copy this piece of code with a Control-C, and we can insert that not into the PHP but into the HTML part, and again we have to reformat that to tidy it up a bit. Right, so we've got that in there, and we can save that, and then it says we need this fragment inside a PHP, but it's a separate file which is called test2.php, which is invoked when this button is pressed. So we need to go here and add a new item again, which is an HTML page whose name is test2.php. And then we can take this piece, this PHP fragment, place it in our body here, and again we have to format it again. And these ... dots mean there's some more code to go in there. So there's code to set up the connection and code to close the connection, because this is a separate PHP file and doesn't have the code which created the connection that we had before. So we can just borrow that from the earlier piece of code, and there we are, we're creating the connection. And when we finish the query here, then we can borrow this piece of code to print out the result of the query and close the connection. So we've got a basic piece of code to connect to a server, and then it pulls the number of doors out of the form here from the variable doors, puts it in a query which it submits to S database as an SQL query, and then it goes around that result and attempts to resolve that. So we can save now test2 PHP, and we can go back to our web form and look at how that inquiry is going to work. So if we refresh our web page, you can see now that we've got a query here, and we can select a number of doors, and we can press submit query, which then invokes this test2. So I'll click on that, and now we've got some errors complaining about some of the things which we can use to debug. So it says the query expects parameter 1 to be a resource, but it was a boolean, and then fetch array has got a boolean. So these are actually showing some runtime errors. So if we looked, if we weren't sure, we can see this query had parameter 1, that's this one, connection, is a boolean, and it shouldn't be a boolean, it should be a connection, and this comes from this connect. So if you're not sure, we could just go to the web and we could say PHP SQL name of the function Boolean, and let's work out why. We've got a bit, and then we can go to the manual, and we can see here in the manual it shows the return value returns what we want on success and false if an error occurred. So we've looked at the manual page, so we can see that actually this could be a false. Which is an interesting thing about types in PHP, that variables can have Boolean type and not Boolean type. So they can have sort of multiple types. So we can actually find out if there is a connection, so and only do this connection if we were able to do something, and then we could put an else statement, and then we could put some kind of error message like echo database not found. And the database we were looking for, so we could put this connection info. We could try and ask about this. So let's see if that works, and we can actually just press refresh here and retry the same query. Okay, so it's expecting something like a comma. Let's put a comma in and save it. And just press a refresh again. Database not found. So then we can look why. You can see I've copied the code without changing my username. So now I can refresh again, it'll do the same query, and now it has a Boolean on this fetch array here. So that says the results didn't do something. So I could do a similar test here now. If $results and put the brackets round the part that handles this query, which is this one. Now we need to make the indentation a bit better because it's hard to read. Okay, so that's the test, and then we can put an else here, and then what we can do in the else is put an echo and say faulty query, and we could put what the car's query was. So we could save that and rerun this script, which will send the number of doors again. So it says a faulty query. I should put a space in there. A space in there. Make model seeds. So it doesn't crash now. My my script delivers its own error message. But why is it a faulty query? Well, if I go and look at the number of tables in cars, we've got make and model, doors, price, but no seats. And actually that's the fault. So we can't query the number of seats. So if I remove the number of seats from the query and then I rerun the query again, there we are. There are all the cars that have the number of doors that I asked for in the database. And the same one occurs many times because I've added it to the database many times each time I run the script. It keeps adding the same car over and over again. Well, they could be different instances of a Ford Mondeo and a Ford Fiesta. It doesn't know they're the identical one. So it seems to think it's got quite a large number of Ford Fiestas and Ford Mondeos available in the cars database. So there we are. We've turned that fragment of a query into a fully fledged query that is enacted from that form. And then there's some suggested tasks that will give you the skills to do your coursework. So there's one that's create some web pages to go through your crime database, to select police forces in a year and display the number of crimes, and also add some more web pages that select specific types of crimes from the database in specific years. So eventually, when you've tried out those exercises built on this basic knowledge of setting forms and doing post requests, you should now be able to implement a location PHP which allows you to put a user in the database and to make post requests to update their location in the database. And you can test your get and puts using this location.html that was made earlier. So that gets you a long way towards doing the coursework. So I hope you found that nice and useful.